In 2020 alone, I learned everything I needed to know to get a job as a software engineer, and what I'm about to talk to you about is extremely hard to find because it's not common knowledge, so I recommend you watch until the end. After 2 years of working professionally, I know precisely the easiest and fastest way to get your foot in the door as a software developer and make above the average salary wherever you live, whilst fundamentally turning you into a better thinker and autodidact. 2019 was my first year of college, and I felt like it was a waste of my time because I did not feel productive at all and was unhappy while in school. So I decided to do everything I could to become financially independent, to do whatever I want through securing a remote job as a software engineer, because I felt like it was the best option for me. And I also feel like we've been indoctrinated to believe college is the only way to be successful, when clearly it isn't true, when there are so many big ballers who never ever went to college. But we aren't supposed to bring that up because they just got lucky or were born into it, had rich parents, or whatever other excuse you might make or label you might put on people you don't even know. I felt this way like all my life and questioned the path the system put out for us since elementary school, because I figured out anything can be learned online at like such a young age, and how to learn anything online. So I got in the pattern of looking at the internet through an educational lens, which I'll share with you today on how you can help yourself do that. So when 2020 rolled around and we were locked down by the elites, instead of online classes where the information I could learn in a few weeks was drawn out a few months, I kind of decided not to tell anyone and take matters into my own hands to ensure a future I was happy with by trusting in my judgment that I could become financially stable without a degree and without an internship. Now, I paid hundreds of dollars for online courses, and I'm going to be recapping everything I learned for free, so you can be on the path to living the life that you want to live. The content of this channel is revolved around how to properly use the internet to benefit you in the real world and adopt the ability to critically think for yourself in a world of groupthink through the lens of someone who was thinking in terms of if and else statements in early middle school, which is the primary reason why I became an independent thinker and not bound to the thoughts of others. But for real, if you stick by my side, I promise your life will get better because you'll start to think for yourself and make the decisions best for you. And you can become a software engineer through all the content I make and applying it. So make sure you subscribe right now. Don't wait. Basically, when I analyzed everything I could to figure out what it is I need to get a job as a software engineer, it was simple. Specialize in something specific related to the software engineering niche. Now, I'm going to save you time and make it so you don't get lost and start focusing on a bunch of things and being confused and not really knowing where you're going, and just get to what you need to do to get into the field and share harder to find information to just make it as easy as possible for you to just get a software engineering job and become financially independent through that. And that's the main purpose of this, but you can also apply everything I'm about to say to so many different aspects of life. But listen, my system for getting starting in the industry will make you more valuable than a fresh college graduate who has a computer science degree, because you will be able to provide value to your employer from day one. Most college graduates, the day they graduate, aren't able to provide value day one as a as a software engineer. So now, I'm assuming you know nothing about software development and the software development cycle. The first step is to understand the roles of each person on a software engineering team. Now, a keyword to remember is agile development, and we will go over action steps for people serious about getting hired as a software engineer at the end of this video, but you need to continue watching to get the full picture of the broad sense of the industry, okay? Next is to understand what is front-end and back-end development. So front-end developers create web, mobile, or desktop applications. The back-end supports the front-end through servers, databases, whatever, right? It's easier to understand through a real-world example. So pretend you're watching this on YouTube app or the YouTube website. So the entire display and the logic behind what you see is the front end. All the code running on your device is the front end. It is sending data to the back end. In YouTube case, the back end, and in all cases, the back end is not running on your device. And for YouTube's case, it is running on Google server, and it is sending you everything you need to make YouTube function. So YouTube's backend figures out which videos to recommend you and sends that in a format that the front end can understand whenever the front end requests that data. YouTube's backend is also figuring out where the actual video is stored, retrieving that video, and then sending you the video and all associated data like likes, view count, and etc. to your device where you actually see it and can interact with it and the entire YouTube platform. Users need the front end to access the back end, okay? And you can get a job by only understanding the front end and the very basics of the back end. You only need to write front end code to get a job, and it's the best way to start and actually make something useful and something you can leverage to help you get a job. And then eventually you'll be able to easily learn how to write backend code when you have extensive front-end experience, if you choose to do that and want to learn more about it, which you should, so you become irreplaceable. But that's beyond the scope of this. Just when self-taught, you need to build front-end projects before building back-end projects. And there are projects you can make, and there are applications on your device right now which are solely front-end, meaning they don't depend on a back-end at all. So some examples of this are like single-player games and utility apps such as notes, editors, and file explorers can all be apps that solely rely on the front end. To elaborate this further, to get this in your head, okay? The back end can't be accessed in a useful way without some front-end project which communicates with it. And also, just a side note, the backend requires a more in-depth understanding of computer science, which you will just naturally learn over time through the experiences you create for yourself and the experience at your job by working with other engineers. So now you understand the easiest way to become a developer is by becoming a front-end developer, because you only need to understand half the equation fully. For web and desktop applications, which are both front-end, there is a whole host of different ways to create software, and there are too many frameworks and too many options that are just overwhelming for beginners, and it's just gonna drive you crazy, and you're never gonna be sure like if you're going the right direction, and it's gonna be the most difficult to actually like stick with something there, because you're just going to be constantly overwhelmed with all these frameworks, all these different tutorials. It's going to be a whole lot harder to get good enough where you're actually valuable enough to provide value to a company where they want to hire you as an engineer. Now, for mobile development, there are basically two options. So I should note there is multi-platform and native development. And there are two operating systems which you probably can guess, are Android and iOS. So Android is like Google phones, Samsung phones. It's just an operating system. And iOS runs on like iPhones, iPads. And yeah, each of these platforms require code specifically written for each operating system. And there are ways to code for both, and that's where multi-platform development comes to play. But there are also way too many options for that, which is overwhelming. And to be very competent in multi-platform development, you need knowledge of both operating systems to effectively write code that works for both iOS and Android. And then in addition, there are many problems associated with multi-platform frameworks, which you should have the curiosity to figure out the basics of on your own. But that is beyond the scope of this video. Now that you have a broad overview of everything else put in place, we are left with native development. There are only two options, and it's super straightforward: Android and iOS. Becoming a native developer is the easiest and best way to break into the field because it only requires proficient knowledge in either Android or iOS, and the salary ranges of both of these positions are on the upper end and will always be in high demand because apps that are written natively will always have the best user experience for users, among a bunch of other reasons which you should learn what are the pros of native development versus multi-platform development. And then in addition, you should also learn about what are the pros of multi-platform development over native development, because there are still companies that use it for specific reasons. Usually it's less complex apps, but then again, you need to learn how to do research and figure this stuff out, because I just did this myself, and that's the best way to do it, is just to research it, to understand it, to grasp it, to get a broad overview of everything so you know what is best for you and just can understand everything. And I haven't, just to make sure you understand, native apps mean you write code explicitly for the Android operating system or iOS operating system. And there's always countless native apps being built or needing to be maintained where companies need native developers to do that work for them. So now, instead of all the countless overwhelming options for types of software engineers and trying to find specific tutorials to master your specific framework and all that kind of stuff, there are two obvious choices to pick from. I need to note you must have a Mac to easily develop on an iOS. If you really want to do it, you can actually still technically develop on a Windows or Linux machine, but it's very hard. You'll have to Google that, and probably you should just kind of know that it's possible because it impresses employers and it just shows that you're curious about the industry, which is honestly needed to succeed as a developer, especially if you are self-taught. So that might influence your decision, but really the choice is yours, and I'm recommending picking whichever platform you personally like more, because you'll be using that phone to test, and then in addition, it's good to just develop for platforms you actually like using and that you do use, so that you can actually understand the design guidelines and basic UX experiences for each platform, so you can really make the best app possible for your company and for all of your future endeavors, whatever you may do. So set the intention from day one when you're first starting out on whether you are going to become a native Android or native iOS developer. You will go in that direction starting from day one. That it will take a few months really before you can start to understand actually what's going on, and you're going to be confused at first, but things slowly stack up on top of each other, and before you know it, you are fluent in a programming language and you have just fundamentally changed the way you think through being able to code, and you'll get the benefits that you deserve if you put in the work. So if for whatever reason, though, you don't believe native development is the best path for you after everything I just went over, you still must set a goal on which software engineering job you are striving towards in order to actually build up your own experience to get the job in the space. Android or iOS is the most straightforward way to get your foot in the door, and once you learn either framework, it's incredibly easier to learn other frameworks because the paradigms are so similar between platforms and just how code is architectured that it's easy to pick up another one once you get the ball rolling. It is worth it to do the work because it will drastically improve your life and make you never worry about money if you take the patterns of thinking we go over on this channel to also learn how to manage money once you get a job. For me, it just feels so good knowing that no matter what I do, I know that I can easily acquire a remote job working as an Android developer anywhere that I go for forever. Like, I know that I am extremely valuable to companies because of what I have done for my company. So this video is a 1 of 10 part series on everything you need to secure a software engineering job. This one just goes over the broad overview of the industry, which you need to understand to be able to get a job. So for the next week though, here is what you need to do. So first, if you are actually serious about changing the trajectory of your life to the direction you want to go in, you need to dissect what I'm about to say. Back before the information age, which is what we are in now, you were extremely similar to the 5 people who you spent the most time with. Now, with all the media and information that exists, you are also increasingly similar to the people whose content you consume. Because of algorithms, your feed is probably completely utter trash and stops you from reaching your goals without you even realizing it. If you only start consuming content from people who have achieved what you want and from people who you want to be more like, you will naturally take the actions needed to succeed and stride towards the direction you want to take in your life. If you take anything from this video, it is to be mindful of the content you consume. I don't use TikTok or watch Instagram Reels or anything of that nature with short form generated algorithm content because letting those algorithms run its course allow for little control over what goes in my mind. And plus, the people who own those algorithms can literally push anything they want in like a feed of 50 videos to influence public opinion and thus influence your thoughts that you have on a daily basis. In addition, I primarily watch videos that I directly search for and only have a few subscriptions from people who are successful or have knowledge in the areas I'm interested in or who have just very, very high production value content that I just enjoy watching for entertainment. And I highly recommend you take matters into your own hands and be careful on the content you consume. Personally, I got a software engineering job at 19. I'm an independent thinker from the masses. I am close to achieving financial freedom, mental freedom, nutritional freedom, social freedom, individual freedom, environmental freedom, have achieved intellectual freedom, and close to achieving physical freedom, and will eventually achieve time freedom as well. If you want to start looking at the world in new ways and achieve a level of freedom unbeknownst to most people, I highly recommend you subscribe to me because deep inside everyone is a strong, strong desire for freedom. And if not, just take into consideration what I said about the content you consume and how it shapes who you are as a person. And maybe even delete TikTok and Instagram until you reach your goals. Check out your subscriptions to see who it is that you're becoming more like by watching, and probably unsubscribe from a few people. Take some time for some introspection, which is the examination or observation of one's own mental and emotional processes, and decide what you want to do so you can figure out the right questions and words to search on the internet, so you can choose whichever path it is you want to go. Now, in this video, there are actually a lot of questions on screen. You need to Google and search on YouTube to find the answers yourself if you are super serious about this, because you need to get in the pattern of being able to find the information you want easily. And if you want to become irreplaceable as a software developer and literally learn anything you want and even enjoy the process because you're dictating what you are learning, like, you had some choice in regards to clicking this video, and you are already on the path to directing the information you take in. So continue to do that, even though if you might have been recommended this by the algorithm or whatever, you still kind of clicked it. If you searched it on YouTube, good job. You are in the right direction and right mindset already. Just keep practicing and being mindful of what you're taking in, and you will be wildly successful and reach whatever goal you're striving towards, and just be an independent thinker and do whatever you want. So feel free to rewatch this entire video to further digest it, and for every question that was on screen, learn about it and figure it out. The goal of this week is to acquire a broad overview of the entire software engineering and developer industry. A pattern of school that I disliked is we often go into specific things in depth before actually comprehending the whole picture. And it's invaluable to have the ability to get a broad overview of any topic and start to think through things with that lens, because the more you know, the more you earn, really, and the more you grow, and you can connect things from different topics when you just have a broad range of knowledge to connect. And of course, it's also valuable to have the ability to go in depth on any topic, which each of the questions in this video does go very in depth if you choose to do that. Please actually get something from this video by taking action for yourself for once, because you are ultimately the one in control. And there should be video on screen now. You can click for the next steps if you already have an understanding of everything and just know what you're doing. And subscribe if you haven't already, to just dive into mine of some crazy polymath on the internet.